welcome to the Townsend Institute podcast series, Tips, a show produced by the Townsend Institute at Concordia University, Irvine. This podcast provides tips into leadership, coaching, and counseling topics aimed at helping listeners grow in both their personal and professional lives. I'm Dr. John Townsend, psychologist, organizational consultant, and author of over 30 books, including the New York Times best-selling Boundaries series. I'm also the founder of the Townsend Institute, and I'm excited to introduce your podcast hosts, Townsend Institute Program Directors Dr. Ashley Andrew and Dr. Gilbert Fugitt.
While all of our podcast guests are special and are tied in one way or another to our Townsend Institute, today's guest plays a pivotal role. Dr. Gilbert Fugitt serves as a Townsend Institute Program Director and our chaplain. He is also a Townsend Leadership Director and, of course, perhaps his most prized role as co-host of this podcast. In this week's interview, we'll learn more about Gilbert and the journey that brought him from the Great Plains of Kansas to the sandy beaches of Southern California, a journey that includes decades of higher education and ministry experience, and most recently, a certification with the International Coaching Federation. That ICF certification, along with years of leadership and training experience, make Gilbert an excellent guest to talk with us about a very important topic in the growth and development of leaders, stretch goals. So stay tuned. Well, welcome, Gilbert. How are you doing this afternoon?
Ashley, it is great to be here and on the other side of the coin today, huh?
Yeah, we're turning the tables a little bit. And instead of having you alongside me as a co-host with some of our awesome guests we've had so far, you get to be in the hot seat here today.
I am honored to be on the Townsend Institute podcast series. So. All
right, good. I promise I won't be too hard on you here.
Sounds good.
In all seriousness, let's go ahead and jump right into it. To begin, tell our listeners a little bit more about you and the journey you've taken to get to your role here at the Townsend Institute at Concordia.
Well, absolutely, Ashley. Yeah. So, I've been involved with, ministry. I worked at a church for a long time as a director of Christian education. And then I came several years ago to Concordia and, worked in student life for a really long time. And one thing I always noticed and worked with a lot of people on was, what's their goals, right? Worked with a lot of students. They wanted to accomplish, certainly wanted to get through with a degree, but more so than a degree, how's God developing them? And so really started thinking more about goals. How do we do this? How do we work with people? And then a role opened up for me in the Townsend Institute, which greatly blessed to be a part of that. And just really with our students here, with my own coaching practice, goals have become more and more pivotal, right? Because we went through COVID, we went through all these things where everything just kind of went up in the air. And what in the world we're going to do today? And so now it's actually helping stay focused, people stay focused and accomplish something. And we'll talk a little bit more about that process. So.
Absolutely. Well, goals are certainly not, a new thing, but to any of our listeners out there, no matter what industry you're in, even from elementary school, many of us were taught to make goals and hopefully stick to some sort of a schedule to help meet those goals. But we're going to take it a step further here in our discussion today and talk specifically about stretch goals. So share with our listeners a little bit about what is the uniqueness of a stretch goal and how did you get interested in studying these?
Absolutely. Well, a stretch goal, as Dr. Townsend talks about it, and I like his definition. He says, stretch goal is not something you can accomplish tomorrow, right? If you can do that, then that's not a goal, but it is something within like a year that you can accomplish it. And it's going to, as it just says, stretch you. I mean, there's some things that are outside of, what you're going to do. If you say, I want to, play on the Lakers, well, probably not, but there's some things that, a lot of things that we can actually accomplish in it. And if we put together a timetable and a plan, we can make it happen. And that's what a stretch goal is. That's something that you can't do in a day, but you can accomplish it in a year. So that's how I look at those.
Well, that's a great definition. I like that. And I do know you like basketball, so don't give up on your goals. The Lakers, it could happen for you.
It could, they haven't called yet, so I don't know. Maybe I got to send them my number because I think they might need some help. So we'll see.
I think for that, you might need a stretch goal and a little bit of prayer.
and I might need to actually stretch. Like I might need a little taller, be a little taller. But yeah. So you ask about what got me interested in them. Well, Personally, I feel like sometimes I am a great culprit of I can do a bunch of things all day and kick up a lot of dust and not really sure if I accomplished anything. And so I figured that, I need to get more focused on that. And then professionally, I just see so many coaching clients, and students and people in my Townsend Leadership Program struggle with how to stay focused and actually get something done that they can celebrate and be excited about.
That's great. So you've given us a pretty good definition of what a stretch goal is and perhaps some of the reasoning as to, why this is important. But talk to us a bit more about the components of a stretch goal and really how it's connected to the Townsend growth model we talk about so much in our programs and on this podcast.
That is a good question I'll go into because, I got actually a little frustrated sometimes as I'm working with clients because, we always talk about SMART goals. And I go, I think there's a great way that we can connect the Townsend growth model and the stretch goal and create a powerful acronym that can work. So I worked together, curated a stretch goals worksheet, had a friend and a colleague work with me on this, Rakia Robinson helped design this really. And so we love Rakia. And so one of the first things is I made it to work with stretch. So the first one was to be specific, so that it's clearly defined, that you can measure it, because what outcome do you actually want to achieve? So you have to be really specific, not just, well, I think I might want to become more healthy. Well, let's be specific. Let's make it measurable. And what can really be helpful is if you break it into quarters. Okay, what's my goal for Q1, Q2, Q3, so that you can start thinking about that. So that's the first part is being specific on that and make it measurable. That follows with the SMART goals. I mean, that's kind of something you think about. But then time, what is your timeline to accomplish the stretch goal? Again, by each quarter. So what's this timeline? What do you want to do? And I think that's important because sometimes we can get overwhelmed when you think of a big goal. Like, let's say it's running your business and you want to double your income, or let's say, you want to develop a leadership presence or what is it in a stretch goal? What's the timeline? What in each quarter can you do for that? Or of course the one of losing weight. That's always a big one that maybe I need to work on a little more, but okay. And then relevant. Why does it even matter to you? Why are you going to do it? We'll talk about it in a little while, but Katie Milkman wrote a great book on how to change. And she wrote that, if it doesn't matter to you, if it's not relevant, you're probably not going to do it. We put down goals because we feel like we should, right? That people ask us what we want to be when we grow up, and we tell them what we think they want to hear. And we do that with goals too. Like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I think I ought to do this. Well, it's not really relevant. You really don't want to do it. And so you're probably not going to. And so that's the problem that we run into. Is it relevant to you? And then that goes into the next one. Energizing. Does it get you excited? What makes you want to get up and think about this and tell others about this? Do you get, or you just kind of your eyes glaze over and you not really want to do it? So energizing is another very important one. And then it goes to team. So a lot of times what I find for people is they try and do this in isolation. So think about who is your life team that will give you frequent connection, and in the Townsend model, relational nutrients to accomplish your goal. Who can you, when you're having a good day or a bad day, you go to and talk with them about it and can get you motivated or celebrate with you too. And then character. So character capacity, that's the C part here. Often we don't think about, hey, how can we put in the character capacities? Remember that continent, Asia. So we have attachment, separation, integration, and adulthood. And where do we land on all this? And if we can nail that and say, hey, I really want to have a better leadership presence and work with my direct reports and increase what they're doing. Well, maybe it's integration. Maybe you're fragilizing them too much, or maybe it's adulthood. And so think about how that is going to land, and then how you work on your character capacities. And then the last one is honor. Think about how you're going to celebrate the work that God's allowed you to do, and striving to attain excellence. What does excellence look like? So that's it in a nutshell on the model and how it connects to the Townsend growth.
Wow. So well said. I'm going to play those back for our listeners because I know many are listening when they're, perhaps on their drive to or from work, or maybe they're at the gym working out to also maybe become a member of the Lakers one day. But let me read those back. I like that. The components of kind of making up a good solid stretch goal. It needs to be specific. Consider the time, right? The timeline, relevancy. Does it energize you? Who's the team to kind of support you, fill you up? Your character capacities. And of course, honoring, like you said, honoring the gifts that God's given us to fulfill in our various vocations. That was really great, Gilbert. I like that a lot. Great connection to our Townsend growth model. And really just, I think, representative of the idea that it's not just one sliver of who we are, but to have really a clear and defined stretch goal. It's going to take an army, take a team, take time, and really take all essences of who we are. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course. Yeah. And there's some great parts in there that we think about with our team, the peer pressure part, you even give it to me and you don't even probably know it. But like when we get together to talk about our assessment reports, I probably would never accomplish one if we didn't have a meeting set on when we're going to look at, hey, how does this measure come out and what's your report look like and things. So stretch goals, got to have a team.
Absolutely. Well, and it's so applicable, again, to all industries, all leaders, all employees, no matter where you are. I mean, I think this is a great thing for students to keep in mind, those that are on their way to, earning a particular degree, to those running maybe a small family-run organization, to those, at the top of, a multi-million-dollar organization with hundreds of individuals reporting to them. So really, really great synopsis here. Appreciate you sharing. All right, let's flip the gear a little bit here. We've talked again about the definition of a stretch goal, these great components that play into them. A little bit of storytelling time here. I'd love to know, what is the worst advice you have received regarding goals?
That's a great question, Ashley. So, I think of a couple of different ones. I'm not going to name to keep the innocent, from, or maybe not innocent.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah. But, I had one supervisor once when I tried to talk to him about goals, they actually couldn't get out of their own whirlwind, their own day to day. And so to ever give me anything to stay focused on, that would be success. And so I would ask them, hey, I'm thinking about trying to do, trying to move this project along, and they would just say, oh my goodness, let me tell you about what's happened to me today. And they just couldn't wrap their mind around that. And then of course, another advice I kind of have been given before is, oh, you know what, that seems really hard. You just give up, right? Just don't even try. Why would you want to go and get a college degree? So I do remember that kind of, from different people is, well, why even do that? Just go get a job and start earning money and things.
Throw in the towel.
Yeah, just throw in the towel. Just go and give up on that. And so you certainly have to filter out some of that bad advice.
Absolutely. Well, that's tough. And even though we can kind of, chuckle about it a little bit here and there, it is the truth, though, when it comes to goals, is they can oftentimes, be daunting and intimidating for many who are feeling the pressure of kind of the day-to-day whirlwind that you're talking about. So that leads me to my next question is, especially in your role now as an ICF certified coach, in addition to the work you do with our students at the Townsend Institute, how do you approach working with clients who are struggling to achieve their goals?
Yeah, with clients or students, when I talk with them, that's a good question, because that's the hardest thing. What I feel a lot of people are struggling with today is connection with other people, and then feeling like they have accomplished what they wanted to do. And so I think the big thing is to break it into small steps, and attune to their situation, and actually see if this is important or energizing to them. They may say, oh my goodness, yeah, I said I wanted to hire like 5 more people, but I don't really want to do that. I really kind of like what I'm doing now, and I don't want to hand this off to people, even though they might need to. And so helping them reevaluate, okay, well, what is something that makes sense to you that you're actually going to do is, and then also helping them celebrate the small steps that they have done. Because what I find is our mind is really good about forgetting what they've accomplished. And so they keep moving the goalpost on themselves. And so to finally say, hey, this is what we want to do. I had one guy the other day thought about, he's got an offer to sell a small business. And it's a great offer to do this. He feels like he hasn't accomplished everything. And we said, well, where did you come up with these goals? He goes, well, I met with 3 people, me, myself, and I. And I just created these things that meant that I was success. And we're like, well, it's been 5 years since you put those together. Let's reevaluate. And so we're going to look at that as a Townsend Leadership Program team and think about, hey, are you really there, or are you just creating these goalposts that aren't accurate anymore? So,
wow. Yeah. Sometimes we're our own worst critic, right?
Absolutely.
Wow. Very good. Well, as we start to kind of wrap up here a little bit, for our listeners that are, I'm sure, loving what they're hearing with regards to stretch goals and how to really make this kind of a realistic endeavor for those, if people wanted to find out more information, what are some good articles or authors that you think do a good job in examining this whole idea of goals and stretch goals?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, of course, I think Dr. Townsend does a great job when he talks about the funnel. He's done a nice job, stretch goals in the funnel. I think Katie Milkman does. She's a researcher economist, and she talks about how to change. That's a great book. And then a couple of our TI fellows, I highly recommend John Acuff. He's got a great podcast. All It Takes Is a Goal. He talks a lot about this. Michael and Megan Hyatt, their book Free to Focus, which is a wonderful resource. And I think they also have one called The Best Year Ever. And I think all of those folks do a great job looking at goals, maybe not necessarily stretch goals as much as what we're talking about today, but they do talk about goal planning, and I'd really recommend them.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the Free to Focus book. We actually read that internally here as a Townsend team, right? Our dean helped guide us on some reading and book club type questions as regards to that. And it really helped shape a lot of how I kind of plan my day and plan my work week and the goals that I have, both short term and long term. So great recommendations. Well, we've come to the end. And as the co-host of the podcast, you know how we end each episode. And that is, on the Townsend Institute podcast series, what is your takeaway tip for our listeners today?
Well, Ashley, I don't want to just give one tip. I'm going to go with 2.
Of course you do.
Of course. So the first thing I want to say is keep your goals visible. Write them down and put them in a space where you're going to look at them every day. I have found that if I write mine down and put them in my drawer, I don't think about them. So I, have put them up where I can see them. It's kind of a public declaration of this is what I'm going after. And it really helps. It really helps. It might sound strange to think, hey, I need to do that. I think it's a big deal. The second one is take time to actually celebrate what you've accomplished through the gifts that God has given you. So sometimes we get down ourselves because what we aren't doing well. Think about what we are doing well, and the stretch goals and the things that we have accomplished, the growth that we've seen maybe over time. A lot of times with students and clients, often just reflecting on, oh wow, I have really worked on my separation. I've developed my own voice. This is a big deal. I'm not asking for permission anymore from people. I'm asserting myself and doing well within my career. And so for a lot of people, this is a big step that they didn't realize they need to do. And so to take time and pause and kind of celebrate that is really, really critical.
Absolutely. Well, great tips to leave our listeners with today. Well, Gilbert, we can't thank you enough for all the work you've done to help launch this podcast, but then especially coming here today and sharing a little bit more insight into what you do here at the Townsend Institute and beyond. So thanks so much. And I guess I speak on behalf of our listeners when I say, don't give up on your goal. Lakers, here you come.
Thank you, Ashley. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Special thanks to Gadesa Labawa, CUI alumni, for the Tips Podcast music. If you enjoyed the Townsend Institute podcast series, head to our website, cui.edu/Townsend, to find out more about the certificates or bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degrees offered through Concordia University, Irvine. With programs in organizational psychology, mental health counseling, executive coaching consulting, and organizational leadership, we have a variety of faith-based programs dedicated to helping you fulfill your academic and professional goals, all while further developing your competence and character. Again, that's CUI.edu/Townsend. townsend.edu/Townsend.